It's only mid-October, and there have already been 179 election lawsuits in 38 states filed this year, meaning that 2024 has already been the most litigious year for election and voting cases in American history. Welcome back to Democracy Docket. I'm Marc Elias.
And I'm Paige Moskowitz. Let's get started. Marc, as you said in your intro, there is an absolute mountain of election lawsuits filed so far this year. What should we know about it?
Paige, it is hard to wrap your head around how litigious this year has already been, and we have not yet even hit Election Day. I mean, one way to think about it is that if you included all of the lawsuits filed in 2020 through the end of the year, which remember includes 65 cases filed after Election Day by Donald Trump and his allies, in which he lost 64 of them, you still wound up with more than 20 fewer cases in 2020 than we have already seen in 2024. So this is an absolute avalanche of litigation that has been filed. It has been accelerating. In September, we saw a record number of lawsuits filed, the most in any pre-election month. That we, since Democracy Docket started, we saw more than 40 cases filed in September. We are on a torrid pace for more litigation again in October. And a lot of this is being driven, Paige, by Republicans and their allies throwing everything they can, trying to find every nook and cranny where they can claim any possible theory that the voting laws are not proper or they're not being followed. They are just trying to sow chaos.
So let's dig into these lawsuits a little more, because to your point, the Trump campaign and allies filed 65 post-election lawsuits in 2020. And at least you could say people have already voted. We already know what happened on Election Day. Those lawsuits didn't have evidence, didn't make a lot of sense, but at least you could be like, okay, people have voted. Now is the time to file lawsuits. So far in 2024, we have seen 110 anti-voting lawsuits filed so far, most of which came before people even began to cast their ballots. We're still in the early voting period. People are still receiving their mail-in ballots. We haven't hit Election Day yet. So what are the issues that they're filing lawsuits about in the pre-Election Day era?
Look, I've said this all along. The Republicans have a three-part strategy. We did a whole video on this, and I hope people go click on it after they watch this one, that they want to make it harder for people to vote. They want to challenge voters' ability to vote and harass voters and election officials. And then after the election, they want to contest certification. So that's it. They want to suppress the vote. They want to challenge voters and harass election officials. And then they want to contest certification. So a lot of the litigation we have seen falls into one of those three buckets, right? It is either that they are trying to make it harder to vote, right? They are attacking mail-in voting. They're now actually attacking voting by our men and women in uniform through their attacks on overseas and military voting. They are attacking the poll watching process. And of course, they have started to really push this false notion of non-citizen voting through various purge cases. But they're also bringing litigation to set themselves up for the post-election. They want to make it easier to harass election officials. You know, they've challenged in several states laws that protect election officials from harassment. Now, you might ask, who the hell files a lawsuit saying you have a right to challenge to harass election officials? I'll tell you who. Republican Party and their allies. That's who does. And then, of course, we have seen various cases, including one that you and I have talked about recently out of Georgia, where election denying officials are like, hey, I don't want to have to certify the election results. I want to be able to do my own investigation. If I don't like the results, I don't want to have to certify them. Now, the good news, everyone, is that they are not winning these cases, right? They are losing these cases. So I don't want people to get too hung up on the fact that these lawsuits are being filed. It's important to know that this is what the other side's up to, but it's also important to know that people are fighting for you and will make sure that you are able to vote and that your vote is counted, and that Democracy Docket is a free resource for you to track all of this and stay up to date. If you are not already subscribed to Democracy Docket's free daily and weekly newsletters, there is a link in the show notes. Please do that now, and you will get an update every day in your email box. And then at the end of the week, you'll get a longer one that will tell you what is going on, who's winning, who's losing, and it will hopefully give you good tools to be a good voter, but also give you confidence that the good guys are winning.
Mark, you obviously have done a lot of election litigation. You've been at this for a while. Which one of these lawsuits concerns you the most?
Look, at this point in the process, I like to say I'm paid to worry about everything, so I worry about everything. I worry about making sure there are enough polls, there's enough ballots, we don't run out of paper, that there are enough polling locations, that hurricanes don't disenfranchise voters, but also that Republican voter suppression efforts don't work, that there's not election subversion, that the certification process works right. So I worry about it all. But I think if I had to distill it down and say that there was one theme, it is this: Donald Trump is not going to win the most votes. Donald Trump didn't win the most votes in 2016. He lost Hillary Clinton by 3 million votes. He did not win the most votes in 2020. He lost the popular vote by 7 million votes. He will once again not get the most votes. Kamala Harris will win the popular vote. What is different this time is that Donald Trump faces criminal indictments, and in fact, in one instance, a criminal conviction for which he is waiting to be sentenced. He is more desperate than ever before. He is also losing his faculties. I mean, this is not a guy who was particularly sane 4 years ago or 8 years ago, but he's getting older and he is becoming more and more deranged and more dangerous. And the Republican Party is more forced squarely behind him and his election denying methods than ever before. So if you had to ask me, what do I worry most about? It is that Donald Trump is totally unhinged. He will do anything he can to avoid going to jail, which means he will do anything he has to do to try to win this election, whether through legal or illegal means. We saw that in 2020. We saw the tragic consequences of that on January 6, 2021. So that's what I worry about. I have every confidence that the lawyers and the activists and the campaigns and the NGOs and the good government groups and the civil rights organizations will all stand up and protect democracy. But it's going to need that protection because Donald Trump will never concede that he lost a single state, no less that he lost the entire election.
Obviously, Donald Trump is a big part of this issue, the amount of lawsuits we're seeing. I think we're all used to seeing some sort of litigation after an election, the 2000 election, recounts, smaller election contests. But why do you think it has grown to this scale? Why does it seem like now every major federal election, we all just need to brace ourselves for an avalanche of litigation and contesting the results, challenging the way elections were run?
Because Donald Trump doesn't believe in democracy, and because the Republican Party has given up on a commitment to democracy. It is not like we have more. One of the myths is that we have closer elections now than we did before. That's maybe true in some instances, but it's not universally true. I mean, there were very close elections. 2000, as you point out, was a very close election. 2004 was a very close election. John Kerry conceded. He lost the presidency by a single state, by less than 100,000 votes, and he just conceded the election. Hillary Clinton, conceded an election that she had won the popular vote, and was at least as close, if not closer, than the one that Donald Trump contested in 2020. And by the way, John McCain conceded in 2008. Mitt Romney conceded in 2012. This was a bipartisan affair in the past that you might lose an election and it might be close, but you did not put the nation through endless litigation for no purpose other than to soothe your ego until Donald Trump. And now we have kind of shifted the Overton window where we now are like, well, of course, if Donald Trump loses in a landslide, he'll contest the election. And everyone's just like, yeah, he'll do that. Donald Trump could lose every state by 5 percentage points and he'll contest the election. And most of the media is like, no, that's what will happen. That's sort of normal. It's not normal. And it's not normal that his political party stands behind him. It is not normal that the Republican Party renominated someone who was responsible for the most violent insurrection in our nation's history that tried to prevent the peaceful transfer of power after 2020, and it is not normal that they renominated someone who was under indictment and got convicted of crimes. But that is where we are. So I don't want people to buy into the notion that this is the new normal. This is the normal we live in today because of the depravity and the moral bankruptcy of the Republican Party with Donald Trump at its head. Let us hope that fever breaks when Kamala Harris is sworn in. Maybe Republicans revisit whether they have gone down the wrong path and we can return to a more normal era of politics in which the Republican Party re-embraces and recommits itself to free and fair elections.
Mark, we're seeing a lot of news and concerns around the certification of elections, that point in the timeline where the results are finalized and county officials, state officials say, here are our results, here's the winner, here's the loser. Now, Congress and states have passed a lot of laws since the 2020 election to deal with certification, to say that it's mandatory, to try to circumvent bad actors. But if you're the average voter, how concerned should you be about the certification period and the post-election period?
So this is what I say to the average voter. The most important thing you can do right now is to make sure you're registered to vote. Okay, like not worry about certification. The most important thing you can do is to double check with your county election office or your state election office or on their website that you are registered to vote. If you're not, now is the time to get registered. The next most important thing you can do right now is to make a plan to vote. Know how you're going to do it. Okay, are you going to vote early? Are you going to vote in person? Are you going to vote by mail? Do you have all of the paperwork? Do you have all of the dates you need to know to make sure that you vote? And then the next most important thing you can do is to vote. Okay, is to actually show up and fulfill that civic duty and complete that process by voting. Now, once that happens, here's what I tell you. You can be attentive, and I understand why you should be attentive to the aftermath of the elections. It is not going to be that on election night we know who won. There's going to be a few days after that while the votes continue to be counted and we go into the certification process in which you're going to read a lot of back and forth. And what I want you to know is that there are lawyers, there are campaigns, there are nonprofit organizations, there are civic groups that are going to make sure that your vote counts and that the results are accurately certified. Now, does that mean that there's not going to be blips along the way? No, there will be blips along the way. Look, my law firm and I, we had to sue Cochise County, Arizona in 2022. It didn't stop Mark Kelly from becoming U.S. Senator, didn't stop Katie Hobbs from becoming governor, but it was a step that we had to take as part of that certification process. In Pennsylvania, we had to sue Luzerne County, Pennsylvania. Now, it didn't stop the Democratic member of Congress from taking office. It didn't stop John Fetterman from becoming a Democratic senator from Pennsylvania. It didn't prevent the governor from getting sworn in, but it was part of that process. And will there be more of that in 2024? Very likely, because it is likely that Donald Trump will mobilize more forces to try to undermine the results of a free and fair election if he loses. But the results will be the same. Okay, what we've seen in Georgia in the last few days is the courts saying you are going to have to certify. And I think that that's where the courts are going to land in state after state after state. So don't lose faith in democracy. The cynics want you to think, this is never, my vote will never count, so they therefore don't vote. Don't listen to the cynics. Don't let them win. When we fight, we win. When you vote, we win. So please, everyone, make sure you're registered. You have a plan to vote, and you vote, and then. Let's have confidence in the rest of the process. Thank you all for watching this episode of Democracy Docket. Please make sure you're subscribed to our free daily and weekly newsletters to stay up to date on all of the lawsuits and democracy news that are going on in the post-election period. We'll see you next time.